Hello everyone and welcome back to the Florida Relocation Guide YouTube channel. My name is Adam Hancock, and today's video, like the title suggests, we're talking trends more in the real-time sphere of what's happening in the balance of the year, Southwest Florida, real estate in general. I think these are interesting because you can watch what someone else is doing, or you can see what's generally going on with the market, like things like inventory and that kind of thing. You can draw insights from it, and then you can either sit on the sidelines on purpose and wait for Q1 next year, or maybe you can jump on an opportunistic opportunity based on being a voyeur on the outside looking in. So I hope you find it that way. If me and my team can assist you throughout a potential relocation to the state of Florida, please consider reaching out. Without further ado, let's hop in. Okay, number one on my list in no particular order, we're gonna call Venice, Florida, emerging out of Sarasota's shadow, for lack of better words. And I've been beating this drum for a while now. Just historically, the area, you could say Venice, you could say even just south of Sarasota. Everybody's trying to get to Sarasota, be in the northern corridor. Because you're far from what everybody wants to be close to, it's cheaper, it's more laid back, and this is Venice and western Northport, northern Englewood, and Osprey, Nokomis, all those towns below southern Sarasota, in essence. But over the last few years, it's really changed. It's just been very obvious that it's not junior as much as it's instead of. People are making an intentional decision to choose Venice as another option that you could choose within Southwest Florida. You know, maybe instead of Bonita Springs and northern Naples area, you choose Venice or southern Sarasota. Maybe that people aren't just saying that I couldn't get into Sarasota and that's why I'm in Venice. They're saying I'd rather be in it. Venice individually and the small surrounding area around it sits at 16 points. You know, it's almost 6.5 percentage points higher in growth rate. And you know, like developments like Welland Park, which is one of the fastest growing new construction master plan communities in the United States, sold like 1,200 plus homes, I think, in 2024 alone. Median cost, more importantly, was like in the 450s versus like the 6+ 100K range in Sarasota County. And people are just seeing it as like a really nice alternative that is a bigger demographic than it's ever been. It's way more family friendly than it's been. It's got really highly rated schools, 4 beaches within 18 minutes from these communities. They're different beaches than the other ones, but there's still 4. You have your own downtown. In addition to the downtowns of the master plan, you have new construction versus resale, just everything that you need in one town. And Costco's there now and big box stores. And all of that is 25 miles one way from the thing that you sacrificed getting close to. And I think it's a really important conversation as Southwest Florida is emerging as the belle of the ball of the whole state of Florida. To have more options than just Naples, Tampa, or Sarasota is going to be very important. All right, number 2 on the list, we're going to call Tampa Bay diversification. And this is really a demographic shift thing more than it is like who's in the population necessarily. What spurred this making today's video was I'm kind of always looking at migration. I was the other day. I was just curious about not just net migration, but just total people added to the population of different areas. And if there was any correlators of like a huge difference amongst the larger metros in the state of Florida. There wasn't if you just take like Jacksonville, Miami versus Tampa versus the Panhandle, something like that. But as you went micro, it got more interesting. So if you say Tampa's one of the largest metros in the state, it grows at like a 1.27, 1.28% in the most recent years in total people added to the 3 million plus people already there. Tampa's not just one county, it's 3. Hillsborough is like Tampa, how you think of it. Pinellas is a coastal county, so this is the beaches, downtown St. Pete, etc. If you go north of both of those, all the way east to west, you hit a county called Pasco. Well, 1.2% the whole thing, 7% the whole thing. Pasco alone in the last 5 years grew 15. The reason, one of the main reasons, is what Pasco solves, and we're talking mainly East Pasco, not coastal Pasco, is it solves suburbia. Like most areas, Tampa included, it is very difficult to live within 10 miles or under to where you also work and play if you want suburban housing. And what suburban housing gives you is, one, a new construction environment, which a lot of people from out of state seek. Not only logistically, it's convenient, but also for all the master plan reasons. It gives you multiple people living in separate homes that come together for communal amenities. It's sidewalks, it's parks, it's playgrounds, it's insulated. It's not street to street like the urban districts are. A lot of things just work in the floor plans that are laid out in suburbia. Before Wesley Chapel, which is like the belle of the ball probably, in Pasco County existed, you didn't have a great environment for it. You had a little bit to the east with Fishhawk, a little bit to the west with West Chase, but this really satiated that need. So by going 22 to 25 miles north, even if you commuted in, which I did for 4 years and it's not super fun, you came home to everything your family needed. And in this town is a lot more affordable than the fringes of other towns. And on top of all of that, if you say, okay, I really like Southwest Florida. It's coastal one. Orlando's too inland. Miami's too crazy. Jacksonville's too far north. The Panhandle's a peacock. Well, Sarasota and Naples, for the most part, those are retirement first, work second districts. So Tampa is your big city option, but you still want that suburban environment where you come home to that. And I think the reason that you could kind of devil's advocate this in any conversation is why Wesley Chapel is growing at this rate. On top of that, I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon, because the value is all of my things are geography plays. They're all old school real estate dynamics. Those aren't going to change. Where Wesley Chapel is never going to be closer to town, and Sarasota is never going to be a big city of high-rise office buildings either. So if you need to work in Tampa and want to live in the suburbs, it starts to get small very fast. I think this trend will continue, and you throw work from home on top of that, and eventually if you put ball fields out there, you build the schools into the neighborhoods, people can go either to like the WeWorks of the world and run their own business, or they could go to, you know, that large healthcare office that's down the street. Eventually, it's not really a negative to be far from Tampa, because what are you far from and how are you using it? If it's just for weekends and it's a lot closer than anywhere else, you could travel around the state. Number 3 on the list, we're going to call Lakeland, Florida's commuter boom. And the idea here is just like it says, that you have a metro that encompasses basically Lakeland, Winter Haven, Florida, which you might not even be familiar with. It doesn't come up a ton of people shopping Southwest Florida. That is just perfectly positioned on a map to live there, leave there, and go to Tampa or Orlando for most of your activity, including work. And if you look at the numbers, 40% plus of all workers that live in Lakeland as a homestead leave their town and go to Tampa or Orlando for work, which is a massive amount of the population as a whole. And the reason they're doing that is because the median prices in Orlando are $340K or less at any given time, which is 15% below Tampa and Orlando. And then you have new construction neighborhoods building like single family homes for like $280K with master plan amenities. There is a weirdly dense college population there. Florida Southern's there. There's a few more that are really close to each other. I went to school there for like 3 years. So like any place, a lot of those kids never intended to move there. They went to college there. But a lot of the kids just ended up staying, and now you have a youthful crowd in a town that was not built like that. And then they start stuff, they create things, and now you have startup incubators and cool coffee shops, and the downtown's cooler than it used to be. I think when you're relocating, you rabbit hole. You start in one area and you get deeper in that area. So you're shopping Tampa Bay, you're shopping Sarasota Greater, Orlando Greater. A lot of times you'll bleed into a part of that town, and you're still in that town technically, but you didn't step back to say, actually, how does this live versus all the options that would live similar? What I mean by that is you could stay in Tampa Bay or Sarasota or one of these towns that I mentioned a bunch of times, and you could end up in that 25, 30 mile one-way range to your own town. And if you step back and you actually drew a line from all the other areas that would live similar, you could hit towns like this Lakeland. Of how much further is that commute than you commuting far from your own suburb of your own town that you were targeting? And I think that could open up a myriad of options that maybe you weren't even considering at all when it comes to the central and the northern Florida areas especially. So just food for thought. Okay, number 4 on the list is Naples, Florida equals remote work magnet. This statistic surprised me a little bit. I felt a little bit of the trend, but I didn't realize the gravity of it, and it might surprise you as well. Technically, Naples, Florida, which sits in Collier County, is the highest percentage of their population that work from home in the entire United States. So 22.3% of all of their workers in 2024 technically work from home. It's affluent. 30% plus of all of the people that went in were high paid remote workers. So it's an affluent population. And in a town like Naples with a median price point of like over $700K for a single family house at any given time, Naples, Florida is not a town that you'd rush into for economic work feasibility. It is a lovely area to live if you don't have to commute to work, because it's coastal, it's more laid back. If most of the people that reside there aren't rushing to one place at any given time twice a day, then the whole town just lives very different. The downtowns of towns that aren't based on work first are hospitality based. It's art, it's restaurants. It lives completely different than a downtown that's based on office buildings and commute traffic. And then they did make most people come back to work. And then what do you do, right? Because that income in an expensive Florida town is really nice in perspective of you're making California or New Jersey money and you're living in Florida. That's awesome. Naples seems like the belle of the ball in that conversation, but I think it's more interesting if you look at it holistically about that topic in general. All right, number 5 on my list is the idea of not sleeping on the Space Coast of Florida. The thing about the Atlantic coast, especially if you go central, is it is grossly more affordable than anywhere over here. So if your bookend to the south is Miami and your bookend to the north is Jacksonville. You go Port St. Lucie all the way up to Daytona. You're sitting at median cost. Almost all the towns below 400K, right near the water. You have some rivers and you have the Atlantic, open water, all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting. However, historically, that has worked for retirees because they're small little beach towns. It's not a place you'd graduate college in New York and like seek out the middle of the Atlantic coast of Florida. So back in the day, we had a lot of French Canadian and northeastern United States migrations. The thing about the Space Coast, so it's Palm Bay, Melbourne, Titusville, that metro is industry. You know, if you take the aerospace and defense alone, you have L3, you have SpaceX, you have Blue Origin, year over year, 2.5 percentage points on job growth alone, 6,000 plus new jobs were added to that metro. And this is tech, manufacturing, and engineering because of that industry. And then because of that median cost of under 400K, you're getting high paid jobs that probably aren't in material way adjusted just because you live in a more affordable town. I think what Melbourne is and these areas, it looks way choppier as you go up and down of like, how do I pick? Like, what are these towns versus each other? It doesn't feel like a bubble like Southwest Florida does. But if you dig deep there, it's either going to put you harder back other areas of Florida, or you're going to be like, this is unbelievable in what I can do with my income and stretch here. And then it's stability. You know, the thing about jobs in Florida is if you move to Naples and you work at Chico's or whatever it is, the black and white market, and that goes away, there's nothing behind it. You really want to have these businesses that are anchored by like fiscally trying to be in the state of Florida. It's a really interesting way, I think, to position yourself across the board that would be different than what a lot of people do. All right, number 6, we're gonna call Panhandle Influx. And I just wanted to throw this one in as another potentially overlooked option that could be back on your radar or put on your radar at all if you didn't consider it originally, is the Florida Panhandle. This is a spot that it's basically, you have the Florida Panhandle and then you have the rest of the state of Florida. I talk about that a lot. Once you're there, if you like it, great. But if you get there and you don't like it, you're closer to Mobile, Alabama than you are to other meaningful parts of Florida. You can view that as a negative or positive depending on who you're talking to. I do think in the land of value coastal living, a lot of where people end up is where they visited. And so if you're like New Orleans, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, everybody's like going to Seaside. You know, it's like the Hamptons of Florida. Seaside has not existed forever. Before that, a lot of people go to Destin, you have Panama City maybe a little bit. And then a lot of the New Jersey, New York, Canada are coming to Southwest Florida. And eventually you just kind of settle down in a spot like that. But if you step back and say, if you like a St. Augustine, Florida, but that kind of mix of laid back, more docile retirement, or just a different way to even raise your family that's not like these other towns, that's not hyper development based, I think the Florida Panhandle is incredibly interesting. I went to school there. My wife went to high school in Gulf Breeze. She's from New Orleans. We spent a lot of time there. I almost moved back there. It does feel like a little bit of a commitment work-wise that you're stuck to one metro. If you're out really looking at the macro of Florida right now, and you look at Navarre, Florida, Navarre Beach, Gulf Breeze is actually the town that you go through to get to Pensacola Beach. These kind of areas offer a lot of affordability in the mid-4s or less. It has a very quaint, small town feel depending on where you're at. I think it could be a place that even if you're there just for a few years, that offers a lot more than just being on a map now, for lack of better words, due to Seaside being a thing. Maybe worth a consideration. Number 7 is I'm seeing a real big trend about buyers wanting boutique customization, in the sense that, you know, you're looking at the state of Florida, you can be much more patient now than you used to be. You're even more wary to make a bad decision because of the abundance of options when it comes to like increased inventory mixed with new construction density. And so people are like, I want to kind of mess with my floor plan. I want to see what this might look like based on what's in my head. And not just pick a floor plan from a list of stuff on a website. I don't want it to cost 10 grand to see a rendering. I don't want it to take 3 months where it's not even climatic by the time it exists. And I don't want the house to cost $3 million because I'm not a custom Pinterest board level buyer. I'm somewhere in between. So what's coming out of that is basically builders being much more progressive, because it's not just take it or leave it like it was in 2021. They're trying to figure out how to get top of the funnel conversations. And they're floating out these ideas of customizing a floor plan with an in-house architect quickly for you. Not everybody, but they are, as like to get in with you and envision it. But more importantly, we're seeing it at the price range of maybe that $850 to $1.2 million. So it's not the packaged house in like the Pulte Taylor Morrisons of the world as much, and it's not the $3 million Arthur Ruttenberg or Lee Weatherington. It's the Sam Rogers, which is like a native Sarasota builder that's real boutique. Like the guy that owns it, I think he's in his 90s and he still comes to work 5 days a week and walks every lot. Like ICI is coming to town, ISA in Sarasota, ISSA. They're all kind of flirting with these dynamics. And what I really like about it is if you can have that in hand. Not everybody can really envision these things, but if you try to work through that process and then you have that and they give it to you, and it didn't really cost you any money, and then you go and you whether you buy that or not, you go to these other places. Like, it's that devil's advocate conversations that really creates the no regrets. Like, what am I missing? Like, when you make a choice, you've seen the other options. I think it's a fantastic thing to do when you're remote, if possible, before you can visit, right? Because when you visit, you're just validating, but this is where you're going to have to work through anyway. So I've seen that pop up a lot. I've seen the in-betweeners of not going super ham, because most people don't need to pick every single grout line in the entire house. It's overkill. But they want a little bit more than just like pick one of these 5. And so I think that's going to be bigger and bigger. You also have maybe family-owned companies that can heavily incentivize, or at least are priced fairly from the get-go. So that house has a lot more appreciation ability and the comps are easy to validate. So that is my number 7. All right, number 8 on the list is national builder packaging. We've seen a really big push. I talked to probably 3 builders in the last 5 days about a across-the-board nationwide move to, in a very heavy way, packaging to-be-built homes. So these aren't just spec and inventory homes, but where you're going to come into in a lot of these places. You're going to pick your floor plan still. It's still going to be attached to some sort of lot that you have to build on. And these are normal builds. These aren't full custom. So this is in quite contrast to our number 7 point. And they're going to say, instead of, we're going to go sit down for 2 hours this one day or across these couple of days, and you're going to pick all your design, you're going to pick your structural at the beginning. They're going to say, pick the gold, the silver, or the bronze package. And they're going to tell you what's in it. There's a couple ways to look at it. You could say this real restrictive is not going to work for me. I would argue that it works for most people. One, this is going to be a house you're going to be probably buying for $450,000 to about $800,000. This works way more for these kind of builders because they're already kind of in that playground. They're not letting you do whatever you want anyway. They're just saying pick from this list, and it's just, maybe you could choose things that's slightly different than your neighbor, but what they have is data of what everyone chose forever. So it's just like when they do their inventory homes, they're doing everything that everybody wants. They're doing nothing weird, hardwood floors, they're doing white quartz counters, they're doing your backsplash. If the house is big enough, they're going to do a gourmet kitchen and separate the push-in range to a built-in oven and the microwave, double-stacked ovens, whatever they're doing there. But for the most part, it works for a lot of people if you like that style house. Depending on the builder you talk to and when, what's interesting there is their positioning. Because I think they're guessing how people are going to see it, and I think they maybe over-pitch what it is. So like I talked to someone the other day, they were going pretty heavy at like it's an affordable play to the buyer's benefit. The way I would look at it if you were buying is, one, for the most part, if it's close, really close to what you want, it's going to be quicker and it's definitely going to be cheaper because it's just the idea of economies of scale. It's like a more premium version of what a Lennar or Horton would do, because they're affordable because they're not asking what you want, they're just telling you what you're going to get, and they're buying things in bulk and they control the supply chain, and that's why it's cheaper. But it's a no frills approach. This is going to give you a slightly elevated version of it. I would argue that if you went and picked it yourself, you're not going to be far off from one of these packages because they're trying to make it appropriate from an appreciation and value standpoint. They're building an entire neighborhood. If they build 1,500 homes, by no means do they want your house later to be cheaper than what they sold 2 years ago, because that messes up everything. It's basically price fixing, for lack of better words. They're comping everything off of themselves. They created the whole area. But if they can control and say that we only have 3 packages and in totality, we're going to only need these exact materials, and then there should be a pass-through savings to you across the board. When you come to brands like Pulte, Taylor Morrison, I think you're going to see this much, much more. It's so eerie in companies that aren't technically related to each other of how similar the conversations were. It makes me feel like it's not that disconnected. It makes me feel like it was some sort of group effort, like T-Mobile talking to Verizon. I don't know if that's factual, but I mean, I've had conversations within 24 hours of each other, 2 totally separate builders with 2 reps I've never spoken to that almost described it identical. So I think there's enough data in the market, to say the least, if they aren't connected in any way talking to each other, that suggests that you have a couple smart companies making the same exact decision based on what all the buyers are actually doing. So I think you're going to see that in a huge way the rest of this year and probably all of next year at the bare minimum. Number 9 on our list is inland retirement renaissance. So we are seeing a huge rhythmic movement in this direction, and the numbers are 100% supporting it, that if you give people this combination from out of state, they're targeting Florida, a community that offers a variety of housing styles with prospective affordability across the board to that town. This is not the 1% affluent crowd looking for coastal retirement in Florida. You pair that with a controlled demographic. It's not random when they get here, because these are folks for the most part in this conversation without kids. They're done with that phase, with everything but the beach community that house is based in. So active lifestyle programming, communal amenities, like you come home but you go out and you have a bunch of activity where everybody's kind of trying to do something similar. And then all of that is put in a town with a great healthcare system that's not only great randomly, but it's great because the specialties apply specifically to this age range. Then if you give them all that, it doesn't matter if you're 30 miles one way from the beach. If that's on the table for you, it opens a myriad of possibilities. Because a lot of the towns that people don't want to live in necessarily, that you're seeing like these Del communities or GL Valencia or something like that pop up, these active adult living communities, it's because they're deeming it too far from the main stuff. If you don't deem that your main stuff, it's null and void. And you can lean into all the benefits that other people deem negative. This is Eastern Brandon, Wesley Chapel, which we mentioned earlier in the Tampa Bay market, Zephyr Hills even, Land O'Lakes, Odessa, to the Tampa General Hospital system. And so you can see how your lens that you're looking at the state of Florida can be completely flipped if you don't value what other people value. But the town is priced based on what the majority of people would value. So I think it's interesting, something to really look at, especially in the Sarasota down to Fort Myers, Naples area, because you have Ave Maria, you have a bunch of 55 and up going really east of the Sanibel Captiva Island areas as well. So a lot of land to keep going there, and I think it's going to be interesting going forward. Okay, and the 10th and final one for today's list is called Urban Infill In-Betweener. I've gotten quite a few kind of an interesting inquiries lately. The main one I've been getting is saying that, okay, I like a lot of what comes with new construction neighborhoods, sidewalks, street lights, there's some uniformity of not everybody can just do whatever they want. But to go from that directly to like a Lakewood Ranch, Florida or something where it's like, just Pleasantville, it's too much. And then to say, okay, if I don't like that, my other option is I either have to go urban infill. So I'm trying to create a house on a street that already existed by acquiring land, putting a build contract on it. One, that's very costly because you get killed in land acquisition. So, and then just scarcity, like to say you're going to roll into Sarasota and find land for like 150, 200K was what you would need it to be if you build a custom house, and you don't want to be at 2 million. It's not very feasible. All this stuff trades behind the scenes, but even that, it's just weird. That's a big difference between that to that. When you were just trying to go somewhere in between, or you got to remodel or something like that. And that's just been super anticlimactic for people lately. So out of that, one thing I've been talking just repeatedly lately, just it seemed like randomly, but you're getting more options that never existed. Almost a builder going and building a full street. So they're not just going only single house, so you're at the mercy of that premium based thing. Because if someone did that for you, then it's at a premium, right? Because one, they have margin, but two, they had to build and create a concept, so they cost a lot to do that. But if like a Pulte with Grandura in South Sarasota, they are building 27 homes. It's one street that goes like this. You have Sam Rogers. So there's two neighborhoods right now. They're going to an old school suburb called Palmer Ranch, which it's pretty much 100% built out. And they're going in a neighborhood that already existed, because a lot of that land's still trading. These neighborhoods aren't completely done forever. And they're building 30 homes in the back of a neighborhood that already existed. They're doing another one called Arbor Lakes, I believe, ARBOUR. The pricing hasn't released yet. That's below Lakewood Ranch, but north of Sarasota. So it gives you an option where you can go in and get something between 700K, 1.2 million. Maybe it's custom builder, maybe it's not. It's not perfect, right? Because you got to like who's building it, because they paved the way. But it's not just one house. It's 20 something different floor plans to choose from. It's an infrastructure. See, the thing with master plan is another thing that the person that asked this question that way probably do not like is they don't want to necessarily be super east of everything. They're coming to town for a reason. And if you're going to be in a master plan, the reason they can do cool things is they need land in which to do so. And the land in which to do so, for the most part, doesn't sit on top of the coast. So if you carve out these little pockets of just literally one cul-de-sac, then you lose the master plan amenities in a large way. You gain a new construction neighborhood and you gain location. And so that's your kind of juxtaposition. And I'm seeing it pop up a lot more all over the board here. And it's much easier to go navigate an individual website of someone that like did all that for you than to go try to back your way into a single house in one of the best districts of town, especially in Southwest Florida. So I think that'd be one thing to really consider. More than anything, all of these feel a little awkward because it does feel like you're taking much more of a chance, but it's a great way to really learn deeply about the geography. And if anything, it's going to make you feel 100% confident to not buy in the regular master plan. If you want the safe option, you don't want to take a chance here, this is a great way to learn, because to make the best decision, it would be better to have known the two decisions than to just know the one and find out about the other later. My new YouTube channel, if you made it this far in the video, is basically just doing this all day. So it's called New Home Geek, and it's about going after specific new construction communities to be the lens in which to learn a town. And it allows me to do things there that I can't do on a larger macro channel here. So check that out. I'll put the URL here somewhere as well. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's edition of the Florida Relocation Guide. I hope you enjoyed my take. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel here. Just the best way to see what's coming next. Beyond that, there is a new YouTube channel called New Home Geek that goes really narrowly specific into the new construction market within Southwest Florida and actually beyond as well. So a lot of A to Z breakdowns on new home communities, Sarasota, Tampa Bay, Naples. We're going to even stretch into Jacksonville, Panhandle. Just getting into territory that would be hard to get into this kind of more macro channel. I'm going to talk incentives, contact. New construction, I think, is probably the best lens to learn a town even if you don't buy new. If you hop new construction communities, it teaches you about geography, it teaches you about value in one area versus another. Builders have a lot of information and they show it on display if you just follow them around. And that's what that channel's purpose is, and it's in a big volume environment. That's why it's a separate channel. So it's called New Home Geek, and I'll try to put the link here as well. So a double subscribe to both of these. They work in tandem. We also have a main hub website called thesunshineStateCo.com. There you'll find Florida relocation guides, you will find new home buyer guides, blog audio versions, everything in between. So please consider checking that out if you're kind of rabbit holing around the internet. That's a good thing to do as well. And thank you guys so much for consuming any of my content. We'll see you on the next one.